Good evening. This is Mark.
And this is Kevin.
And this is the Dad Pod. So, our first two casts, we talked about stuff that was going on in our lives, and the second podcast was mainly about mental health. So this time around, we're probably going to change up gears. We're probably going to throw something crazy, but I think a lot of dads can really attest to it, especially in these days, is it's paranormal activity. So, one of our biggest things when we were growing up was that we'd actually go out to this abandoned cement factory.
I cannot remember the name at the current point, but I do remember finding papers, and if we ever got a hold of Dina, we could easily get the name again.
Right. But at one point, our town was a huge provider in cement around the world.
They actually have a train track running, an old track that ran through it.
Yeah, it started from that point in the town, and they also have another abandoned factory they're actually using for its training for like military and police and
firefighters.
But we would travel
Calamityville, that's what it's called.
Calamityville. We would end up traveling this place a lot. We actually dubbed it the playground because we went to it so often, had a blast just exploring the place, had a lot of creepy experiences happen to us there.
Many creepy experiences.
And we figured we'd probably share a few. One we actually got to talking to about earlier today, it's one of the most prominent, is we had seen a cryptid that Kevin describes as Pyramid Head, but walking like
Pyramid Head doing the crab walk.
Yeah, that's what it was. And the one thing that caught my eye was the fact that it was huge. It was comparable in size to a moose. The only problem is we're in Midwestern Ohio. There are no moose in Ohio.
I don't even think deer really get that large over here.
No, not really. Even the reindeer aren't all that big. So, I had to stop for a second because my soon-to-be 1-year-old daughter was kind of crying in the background there. I was going to let her cry it out, but she didn't quite do it. And then my stinky, rotten 2-year-old is sitting next to me. I tried to get him back to sleep, and he wouldn't go to sleep. So he's going to sit around with us and watch the pretty colors on the phone.
So you might hear a noise here and there from him.
He grunts and and tries to touch the phone to turn it off.
Anyways, where were we? We were speaking of by far the most easily corroborate. Oh my god, I can't talk. We'll cut that part, please. Probably the easiest to corroborate sighting either of us have had.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I'll actually forget about it. Like, I'll think, like, oh, hey, did that really happen? And me and Kevin will be talking about something, and he'll bring it up. Like, hey, do you remember this? I'll stop and be like, oh my gosh, yes, I do. And it's one of those things that really sticks to your mind, sticks to your memory. We're walking down this road that the abandoned factory is on, and we ended up coming to this tree line right next to what is it, ammonia?
Well, we weren't there. That's where it was.
That's what I'm saying. We were walking up to that point.
We were headed that way, but yeah, it's an ammonia plant.
And right past the ammonia plant, that part's all lit up. It lights up the road. Is a thick bit of a forested area. It's right next to some train tracks that you can't see from the road. And this road is not a main road in any way, shape, or form. The only people who use it are truckers, and most of the time they go down this road towards the like early morning, and then past that nobody else uses this road. So we were walking down this road, and we came up to that tree line right where the light cuts off, and we stopped dead in our tracks, and it's because something was standing in the middle of the road. We weren't sure what it was. It took me a second to realize that it's not something that we should really be seeing in the middle of the road. It had a very oddly shaped head.
And I swear, it looked just like, a triangular prism.
So, if you could, just imagine pyramid head with a bigger body doing a crab walk. And then it started to go into the forest. We turned tail and got out of there. Yeah, I wasn't about to stick around to see if it was going to charge at us.
And the funny thing about it was, a few days earlier we had been talking about it, because we got heavily into marble hornets.
Oh my gosh, I remember that now. Jeez, we'd stayed up and watched every single one of the videos that they had.
Yeah.
And that it really was creeping us out. And, normally I'd just chalk up, like, small little sightings of things to, oh, we just recently watched something that was scary. But this was very, very detailed.
This was too real to be fake.
Yeah, it was like one of those things, like, we both described it to each other and realized, okay, we weren't seeing things. But there were other parts of our, I want to call it childhood, but it was like early adulthood. It was like between 15 to 20 or so when we were really highly going.
When we were going almost every other week, I would say we were roughly 17 to 19.
That sounds about right.
That was the main time we started.
Yeah, because it was before I had the oldest boy, and then a little bit after, but not by much. We had gone the first time that Kevin had taken me through this abandoned cement factory. There were noises throughout that entire place that still kind of haunt me to this day, that should not have been made. Like, you hear doors closing.
There's no doors in this place except for in the basement.
And they're huge metal doors. Everything, there's papers all over the place dating back from the freaking 70s and 90s. And
I think I found one for 65.
Yeah, this place is pretty run down. There's dust that's settled on the ground in a lot of the places that are at least an inch thick. And it makes sense, because this place is a cement factory that doesn't work anymore.
And, well, we've been through many times. We've gotten souvenirs here and there when we go. We like to take new people, see if they experience things.
And one of the biggest things that we end up experiencing a lot whenever we go is we would go through the front, and there's this little shack right at the start of these silos. And there's two sets of silos. The one on the left was bumped further towards the road. The one on the right was back recessed from the road. The one that had the shack was closer to the road.
It was actually, the opening to a staircase in order to get into the tunnels below the silo on the left.
And we would constantly look up to the top of these silos and see things moving around on the top of them. But almost every other time that we had gone, we'd look up, and at this, right above the shack, at the top of the silo, we'd see somebody jump off and land on the top of the shack.
And you would physically hear the smack as they landed. And then one time, it hadn't happened, but as we were leaving, we both glance up. Sure enough, we see wham! And then it stood up. on top of the metal roofing.
So we decided to run on that time too.
We wasted no time getting the hell out of there.
There was a lot of times like that where we just try not to deal with whatever the heck was going on there.
Remember seeing the hanged man through the window?
That was crazy. But
supposedly, a guy had hung himself from the, what was it, third? Or would you count it as fourth floor?
it was like that was one of the shoot areas, wasn't it?
It was kind of a shoot area, yeah. But it was on an upper level. I know where the beam that actually goes across is, where he actually had the rope.
Oh, yeah.
And we saw him through a window looking up at, what, second floor, I believe it was?
Yeah.
Like, we saw legs, pretty good section of his torso, but after that, we couldn't see anything. And then we got in, thinking, oh shit, somebody might have gotten hurt, or done something bad themselves. And we got up there, and there was nothing at all.
And then coming back through, we just looked back up to see if we could see anything, and there wasn't anything there.
No, not a thing. It wasn't a trick of light or anything, because it was clearly a body.
Right.
And there's no way it was something on a window or something, because by then most of those windows had been blown out.
Yeah.
Either by rocks from other people or...
just sheer age of the building.
Yeah.
Now, what was the first paranormal experience that you could think of that happened to you?
Honestly, being in my house. We moved there, I want to say I was in about third... It was the last part of third grade. Just before Christmas we moved in. And we've been there since.
So that was around like 99, 2000, 2001, somewhere around there?
Somewhere around there, yeah. But, I mean, I've always found the house a little creepy.
Yeah,
it's an old house.
I've got stories about your house.
Well, yeah. I do remember occasionally I will hear a little girl laugh, or let's see, there's a my room is in the basement.
Yeah.
Well, there's a paneling door. It's not really a door. You can only open it from the furnace. There's no real room to get around the furnace. But if you manage to get through there, you can kind of open it and get into my room. Well, there's been a few times where while I'm down there, I hear it open, I look up, and I can almost see something sticking out of it. But as I get up to get a better look, the door closes. And I know nothing's living in my furnace room, because, let's face it, my sister moved back in and it's been very crowded down there for quite a long time. That's just one of the few things. I had 2 dogs while we were there, and both of them have passed.
I remember seeing the one when I was watching the other one.
You were watching Dusky when you saw a lady.
Yeah.
A lady died due to, I don't want to say it was negligence of the vets, but it was basically negligence of the vets.
Gotcha.
By the time she was put down, she was in tremendous pain, and it was just terrible. But I remember every now and again I'd look over into the dining room where she'd usually lay, and I'd see a shadow on the floor.
Just laying there.
Yeah, just laying there. And occasionally it would get up and move over, and that's about it on that, really. I never really experienced anything with Dusky, to be honest.
Right. And I think one of the craziest things that happened to me when I was, I most of the time when I was over at Kevin's, I've been over there a few times by myself. It was to watch the dogs. One of the craziest things that happened to me was when I had just made a plate of food, and I came around to make sure that the furnace was set at a reasonable level so that you guys didn't have a huge electric bill or anything like that. And then I went to walk back up to your room because I was sleeping in your room at the time, and something pushed me. That's yours, buddy. It's your pacifier. And when whatever it was pushed me, I dropped everything. And at first I thought that maybe I just tripped. I am klutzy. I can trip over my own feet, but I wasn't wearing shoes. There was nothing on the ground. And the physical force was from the top of my body, not from the bottom of my body. So something had actually pushed me. I'm pretty sure it was just something messing around with me. It wasn't anything malicious.
That's one thing I've always noticed. It's never malicious. It's always playful in nature. A lot of the time, we'll be sitting in the living room, watching TV or something, and we have a Bose speaker.
What's that? Your speakers blow.
It's like a surround sound bar.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
We have one of those, and every now and again, it'll just turn itself on and the volume will start to rise for no reason. No reason at all. It gets very loud, and all of a sudden we're scrambling to look for the damn remote. And then we end up turning it off, and then it doesn't happen again for a little while.
Right.
And while I said my house is old, we do hear very specific. Like, granted, you'll think, oh, that's just the house settling when you hear the stairs creak every now and again. But we actually hear very specific footsteps going up the stairs or down the stairs every now and again.
And, I mean, there's only so much settling that the house can do. Your house is close to 60, 70 years old already.
It is. I can't even remember exactly when it was built.
No. But it was, I mean, you're going on 30, and that house has been there since...
Before I was born.
Way before you were born, so... And Fairborn was founded in the 50s, and that was one of the areas that was already built by that point.
Right.
So, it's a fairly old house. Now, one of the earliest memories I have of paranormal was... I was probably around the age of 6 or 7. Because I think I was going to kindergarten at the time.
Yeah.
And we lived over in the apartment complex over, across from those flats that, what's-his-face was living in.
Which ones?
They're the flats now, the Arlington flats.
Arlington Flats. I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Back then it was Amity Green.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Funny name, huh? Amityville Horror, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, for a while there, I would wake up at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would hear a physical saw, not like a circular saw, but one of the long saws that... That noise,
Yeah.
I heard that, and I didn't know what the heck was going on. But when I had brought it up to my mom, she was like, oh, the guy above us, what was it she had said? The apartment above us was empty. And the reason that it was empty was because the guy who lived there committed suicide. And I almost want to say that he was trying to work on something before that, like try to build something. I don't know why he would try to do that in his tiny ass apartment, but that's what he ended up doing. Because I think the guy just blew his brains out. That's one of the earliest memories that I had, was I was hearing saw noises at 2 o'clock in the morning. Could have been just that, somebody was doing something stupid at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it was a fairly big apartment complex.
And it is Fairborn.
Yeah, back in the 90s, there's a lot of crazy people.
There still is.
I know. But past that, there was also the time that my cousin had died. And I don't think it was right after the funeral, but it was fairly soon after, like within the next few months. I had a balloon sitting in my room. And at first I thought maybe it was the wind, but I saw the balloon move. And I was a little creeped out. But then I was like, you know what? I have a feeling that that's my cousin. And I asked, I was like, if that's you, could you pull the balloon down? Sure enough, this damn balloon goes from hanging up at the top of my ceiling, dragging down my wall. Stops about halfway, and then gets released up. I had chills run through me, but I was so happy that I knew she was okay at that point. It's always kind of a blast to the system when you experience stuff like that.
Yeah. I remember one time we went to the playground, and we had just gotten into the tunnels, and we heard kind of a scratching, just here and there. And let's face it, it's real dark down there, especially by the time we go, because we're always there about 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
So you're struggling to see anything, even with
a very high-powered light.
And it's so dusty and everything, so it's so difficult to see. But I remember, we were with Dina this one time, and she's very easily spooked. We can attest to that by my hiding in the trunk and knocking. That was fun. That's a story for another time. But I remember she was like, you guys, I think I see something up ahead. And both of us, we're skeptical until something is proven to us. Like, if we don't actually see it, we're not going to believe it happened. So we just kind of blew her off. And we're like, come on, let's just keep going. And then a few minutes later, because it's very difficult to travel in those tunnels too, because it's got that...
Yeah, it's got the grate system that goes down the middle, and there's a lot of them that are actually missing.
And inside are grinders.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to actually walk down those tunnels. But after about 5 minutes walking, she says it again. I see something. There's something crawling up ahead.
It's a computer, buddy.
And the little one is just inquisitive. Anyways, she says, I hear something and I see something crawling up ahead. And I look and I see kind of a movement, but I don't really see anything. So I just kind of blow it off as a trick of the eyes and the light, because it's so dark anyway.
I will say, I think Dina had the best eyesight out of all of us.
But the funny thing is, not even 2 minutes later, you start saying, I think I saw something crawling. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you guys are just being ridiculous. You're feeding off of Dina, and Dina's just feeding off of everything we've told her before. But sure enough, we're halfway into the tunnel, right about where the fan belts are, where there's a nice big wide area where we can all three be standing.
Right, yeah.
And we're looking into the next half, and I see something crawling. And it's not exactly crawling towards us, but it's not crawling away from us either. It's just kind of... It looks like it's pacing almost. It crawls a little ways towards us, then turns around and crawls a little ways back. And I remember that, and I remember the chills it gave me. But I didn't say anything. I refused to say anything to you guys until we were halfway down the tunnel already.
Because if you said anything, we would have turned tail and we would have gotten out of there. I know.
The thing is, once we got to the area where I had seen it, it was gone. I guess it crawled off, and it was too big to be a raccoon or anything like that.
Yeah.
Especially in there. But it was so weird because we got there, and by then we could see just barely the open area of the basement. And we kept moving forward, but I never saw it again. But I do remember Dina turned around and said, "It's behind us now." I don't know how it happened, but I was inclined to believe her at that point. After you had said you saw it, she had seen it. I definitely saw it. I don't know what it was or why, or how it got behind us.
Honestly, with that cryptid sighting that we had seen, I wonder if it could have been like offspring.
Well,
like really thinking back about it.
I suppose the potential is there, but the size of this was generally about a smaller build major. Just kind of crawling, trying to be creepy. Not like having its head up or anything. It was just kind of head down, crawling. If anything, I'd have attributed it to an extremely large raccoon, maybe a massive possum. But it was even bigger than that. And I know it was too big to be either of those.
Right.
I never did figure out what we were seeing or why.
And then we can also talk about a few pictures that we had taken. I know Dina had one of a face in the fire. Do you remember that?
I do. That was actually really interesting.
And then we had the paranormal investigation out in Donaldsville.
Crystal's house. Uncle's house.
Yeah, Crystal's uncle's house. And we had a couple of people actually come along. And that one dude had orbs all around him.
Right.
And he was like...
You remember the scratch I got?
Yeah.
It was like literally from my shoulder to my elbow. Single line, straight down.
And then there was just a lot of stuff that we were able to perceive that not everybody else was able to really catch on about. And then, of course, there was the idea that Bigfoot sightings happen in the backyard, which this area is very, very densely populated with forests. So it wasn't completely unlikely that some sort of cryptid was out in that area. But we were mainly focused on stuff that was happening in the house.
The whole Bigfoot thing was mostly to freak Crystal out in the first place anyway.
Oh, that's right. She was just completely
because she's
freaked out of Bigfoot.
completely terrified. I don't know why, but she's just absolutely terrified. But it's hilarious at the same time. I remember one time we all went late night to the lake. Not really a lake. It's a small pond. It's privately owned. We were sitting around. I don't know if you were there.
No, I don't think it was.
I think it might have been Crystal, Adam, and Dina with me. But I remember one time we were all sitting at the lake, and we actually heard like coyotes across the way. And it's not a very big lake. If they really wanted to, they could have run around and attacked our asses.
Yeah.
But it's not that far.
Just gotta trip one of the friends.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyway, we could hear them, and we could see their eyes across the way. And the best part is, since the other side is like a hill.
Yeah, filled with trees.
Filled with trees. They were at a point where you could see their eyes clearly, and it looked like they were really tall. And every time one of their eyes would flash across the water, either I or Adam would be like, "Oh, Crystal, Bigfoot's watching you. Bigfoot is watching you right now." Freaking her the hell out. Always fun.
Oh, man. That good memories right there.
Oh, yeah. That was about the time you had your other boy, so you weren't...
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff I just kind of fell off the planet for.
You missed out a lot after that.
But, that's okay. I was just trying to be there for my family.
That's true.
Yeah. There was one instance my mom... Oh, goodness. There was one instance my mom had told me about. She had a sister. I can't remember if she was older or younger than her, but they were around the same age. Her sister died when they were just kids. And one night, she was up late playing on the computer. This was right around when computers were, like personal PCs were really starting to get big. We had a Windows 97 machine sitting in our front room in a trailer park. And
over off Spangler, right?
Yeah. And
little did I know you lived so close.
I know, right? That like our paths were bound to cross. But she's sitting out there playing on the computer, and she looks out the window that's right behind the computer, because it's a trailer. It's literally right there. Looks out the front porch.
Right.
And she looks out, sees her sister sitting against the dumpster. She shook her head and she just kind of waved it out of her mind, continued to play, and then looked out there again. Her sister wasn't standing up against the dumpster this time. This time, there were flames coming out of the dumpster. Now, there's no particular reason that my mom should have actually looked out the window in the first place. But she saw somebody out there and saw that it was her sister. Her sister was, you know how somebody can lean up against something, put their foot up against it as well? Yeah, like the forelock with your legs. That was what she had seen her sister doing. Just looking at her and smiling. And then there was a dumpster fire. So, if my mom hadn't have actually seen her sister out in the dumpster, she wouldn't have looked out there again to see that the dumpster was on fire. And that was very, very close in proximity to another property that was filled with flammable stuff.
What a joy.
She was able to call up the police and get them out there and everything.
Did they ever figure out who set that fire?
It was attributed to some charcoal that wasn't completely put out, and somebody dumped into the dumpster.
Wow.
Yeah. So, slowly smolders and catches stuff on fire.
And then it rages.
Yep.
Well, I think that's enough for tonight.
Definitely. I think we talked about a lot of stuff this particular go around.
We did, and honestly, I can say it feels good to remember some of these things. Some of them kind of still gives me chills just thinking about it.
Right.
We hope you guys have a great morning or night whenever you're watching.
Whenever you watch. And as far as attributing this to dad relation, I think all of us have some sort of crazy paranormal story that we remember. And it's always good to think back and really relive some of those situations, really kind of get the blood pumping, which can always get your kids to think about things.
Yes. Never let your kids be closed-minded. Always find a way to keep it open.